Good morning, good afternoon, whenever you're watching this. This is You Have to Watch This podcast. I'm Ryan.
I'm Alan.
And this is Alan. How's everybody doing? Okay. That pause was for you to answer.
Yeah.
If you didn't, too late. Moving on. So
There we go.
So this week, Alan, well, not this week, since this is the third podcast we're doing in a row recording.
Yeah.
I had Alan watch Field of Dreams.
Yes.
One of my favorite baseball films of all time.
Yes. I watched it a few weeks ago.
I
I watched it in anticipation of us doing the episode the next day.
Okay, yeah.
Here we are 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I think you got sick or something. Which happens.
Yeah, no, because I got it was the food poisoning.
Yeah.
If anybody cared to know what I was dealing with.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Ugh. Yeah, I did not want to be you that day.
No.
But yeah, so I had watched it and took a few notes that make no sense to me now.
Well, maybe talking about it might help you remember a little bit.
No, I don't think it will.
You never know.
But yeah, so I watched it then. I watched it late at night because I had to go somewhere in the morning. And,
Yeah.
and then we were going to do it in the afternoon. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess all this is just going to go away. So yeah, I watched it and I remember stuff. So that's why I kind of want you to take point on this one because I don't really know where to go with it.
So for those of you that haven't seen it, at this point, the movie is close to it's got to be 20 plus years old at this point, or even maybe 30.
1989.
1989, yeah. So
old?
it's almost 30 years old.
Yeah. 29 years old.
It's the story about a guy who has pretty much dad issues because he moved away from home at a very young age and never saw his dad ever again because his dad passed away before he had the chance.
Yeah.
And he moves to Iowa, and that's where the movie picks up. He's in Iowa, walking in his farm field, which he never thought he'd ever do. Move to Iowa for one, or even become a farmer. And he hears voices in the cornfield telling him to if he builds it, he will come.
Yeah.
And so he goes off on this adventure, hearing voices and doing what they're telling him to do, which sounds a little psychotic. But what this movie is based around is the fact that his dad was a minor league baseball player that never made it to the majors, and his entire childhood was raised listening to stories about the players that his dad admired and going to baseball games and everything else. And it pretty much ends with him building a baseball field on his farm, almost losing the farm because of it, and ending up not having to lose the farm because people come from all over the country to watch the great baseball players who have passed on coming back in their prime as ghosts playing baseball on this field that he made in his property.
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing around the movie. That's the whole storyline.
I had never seen it before, which is why we did it for the podcast. I wanted to do it because every year we try to do something. You're a huge baseball fan. I think that's safe to
Cheers.
say. You're a huge baseball fan, so we try to do something baseball related around the start of the season.
Yeah.
Here we are a month and a half into it.
Which is still the first half of the season, so it still works.
So I think one year we did 42.
Yes.
I don't think we did a baseball one last year.
Last summer was kind of hectic.
Yeah. But we did Field of Dreams for this. And I knew more about this movie from pop culture than from actually watching it.
Yeah.
So I knew if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
I knew the twist at the end because they talk about it a lot in How I Met Your Mother. Like this is the movie that every guy loves because it makes them just feel stuff. And so
I have to admit, if I don't keep myself straight, I cry during this movie.
Where do you cry at the very end?
There are points in it that I do. I mean, when you not to jump ahead from what you were saying, but one of the biggest points in the movie where it hits me is when we first started this podcast, and I'll say it again, I'm bad with actors' names. Doesn't matter how famous they are, they're never there when I need to say it. Darth Vader's voice.
James Earl Jones.
James Earl Jones, thank you. The speech he gives towards the end, talking about how people will come in and they'll sit down and find a spot reserved for them. Like that makes that that gives me goosebumps. That entire thing, and then having the baseball players come around, like that gives me goosebumps. That gets me emotional. That triggers my childhood. Going to Busch Stadium in St. Louis, watching Ozzie Smith play, watching, just that to me is like you go into a ballpark, everything else melts away, and it's just, to its very core, it's just entertainment, but it's entertainment that pulls on my memories of when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So that speech that he gives rips me up every single time.
Yeah. I'm not afraid to admit it. I cried at the very end with the dad stuff.
Oh yeah, no, and there's that too.
Yeah. And I picked a hell of a night to watch this too. So that before I started watching this, my dad had invited us over for dinner, but I was tired. My wife had worked all day. We already had other plans, so we did our other plans, and then I watched Field of Dreams, and I felt like an asshole for canceling on my dad, saying no. I was like, son of a bitch. It was rough.
Yeah.
But, it got. I don't know if this is gonna get me or not. I had no clue going into it. If I was gonna cry, and I teared up.
Yeah.
No, I'm not afraid to admit it. I tear up at the if a movie's meant to tear me up, then it's probably gonna tear me up.
Yeah.
I feel like this one's meant to.
Pretty much.
Story wise, it's supposed to.
Yeah. One of the things that kind of irritates me a little bit about the movie, though, is you're watching it. I'm watching. I'm just like, I wish life was this. I wish life was like this. I wish something like that actually did exist, and I wish that going about the storyline the way he did, just driving to Boston and getting a hold of that, and getting a hold of that author, and then driving to Minnesota and freely talking to people like that. That doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen enough for it to seem realistic. But that's the only thing that watching it, I'm kind of like, ugh. But other than that, just the showing how when you're wrapped into something, it doesn't have to be baseball. It can be anything. It can be whatever your hobby is. It could be your geekdom. It could be Star Trek or Star Wars or Harry Potter, or it could be the Marvel universe, the DC universe. It could be any other sport, hockey, football, whatever. When you're raised in it, this movie does a really good job of showing how ingrained that stuff can get to people.
Yeah.
With the way he is with baseball, talking about the White Sox, and talking to his daughter about Joe.
Yes, Shoeless Joe.
Yeah, and talking about him and just how he can recite the numbers, he can talk about each game, he can talk about just everything that has to do with it. It's a good example of just it's normal.
Yeah.
To have those type of hobbies that get that insane.
I think the closest other example for me would be the end of Logan. You've seen Logan by now, right?
Not yet.
Okay. You know how it ends.
Yeah, I do.
So that's 17 years of a character that I've grown up with from 2000, Hugh Jackman, his portrayal of Wolverine, throughout all those years, all those different movies, that's Wolverine, and to have that story come to an end and have Xavier's story come to the end in that's the other thing for me is it brings back all those memories of all that, and that's what gets me. That's my baseball.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a good example of a portrayal of, now granted the example they use is baseball, but it's a good example of how tied up people can get into things, how much it means to them, to the point that. For that character in Field of Dreams, that connection with his family, the connection with his dad was baseball.
Yeah.
And then even when he's talking about what he did when he left home, how bad he feels on it. It was something that he loved doing himself, but because he was so upset at his dad, he used his favorite thing and his dad's favorite thing against him.
One thought I had watching the movie is I really thought his dad was going to be Shoeless Joe. I thought it was going to be like a twist where he lied to him about baseball, like his career, because they talk about how he played in the minors.
Yeah.
But he didn't really ever go into details. Like, oh, because he's lying and he's actually Shoeless Joe. Like, that's why he's obsessed with his own career.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't the case. I was like, oh, that would have been an interesting way to take it.
It would have been more, I don't know. It would have been more, if they would have done something like that, it would have fallen into the whole, like, you know, I told the truth, but by a certain point of view. You know, saying that his dad never made it to the majors. He only played in the minors. Yeah. And then having it switch up that the reason why he never wanted to admit that his dad was Joe, so he would just like he flipped the storyline a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I don't even think it'd be that. It was just that the dad lied.
Well, yeah, true.
So, that's just one thought I had watching it.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to leave Iowa at all. So, because he goes to Boston and then he goes to Minnesota. I did not expect that. I just thought it was all in a cornfield.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that going to Boston, then going to Minnesota. Going to Boston for Fenway.
Yeah. Fenway makes sense.
Yeah, for that. Now, at that time when they made this film, Yankee Stadium was still iconic because it was still the stadium that had a ton of history in it, along with Fenway and along with Wrigley. Hence, they bring up Wrigley.
Yeah.
In the film as well. It's just going to Boston when it comes to baseball history, it makes sense.
Yeah.
To go there, and then going to Minnesota, I think was just a random thing.
Is Minnesota on the way to Iowa if you're coming from Boston?
It depends if you want to do a straight line or make a right turn along the way or a left turn along the way.
I don't know.
Okay, so Iowa.
I haven't looked at a map in a long time.
Iowa to Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Boston to Minnesota.
Okay.
Minnesota to Iowa.
That really helps for our audio podcast.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so. Okay.
No. We're good. We don't need it. They're listening on their phones. They can Google a map of the United States if they don't know where Minnesota and Iowa are compared to Boston. I probably could have done that too and saved us a minute.
Yeah,
but
it's okay.
I really liked the speech like you talked about at the end there. I also liked the stuff with the doctor in Minnesota.
Yeah, with Moonlight.
Yeah, where he like time traveled for like an hour.
Yeah.
Like that was bizarre.
Yeah, well, that's the.
I guess it was a lot more fantasy than I expected it to be. Like
no, it is.
Yeah,
because I mean, it's all about. I mean, field of dreams. I mean, and that's exactly what it is. I mean, he builds a baseball field, and the spirits or ghosts of these guys, of either when they were in their prime or around when they died, show up in their baseball uniforms, and this isn't like. You know, and granted, so the movie was made in '89. So this isn't for people listening who are around our age. This isn't guys walking around in, you know, like the skin tight baseball uniforms of like the '70s and '80s. This is like the baggy cotton jerseys. I
guess what I just wasn't expecting was like the time travel aspect of it, and like them picking him up along the road later on, and like I expected the. You can put it. Here, so you don't have to keep reaching over your mic stand. It's just very awkward to watch you like.
So for people who aren't in the room currently, I'm reaching in between the 4 inches between the one monitor and the mic stand to grab a thing of water. And
when there's all this other space on the other side with nothing here, like it's a whole open room on his right. Anyway, to me, ghosts and spirits of the past are one thing.
Yeah,
but then you get into time travel. And then picking like if you have these spirits in the field like that like that's an isolated incident.
Yeah.
But then you have them on the side of the road and picking them up. Like that's something different. Like I did not expect it to be more than just the field. Yeah. Like, I didn't expect them to find this magic, for lack of a better word, magic in Minnesota and along the side of the road leaving Minnesota.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I got you.
It's not that I don't like it. I just wasn't expecting that. So that was a nice little...
expecting him to see the ghost of Doc.
Yeah.
Like walking along the sidewalk.
A young version of him.
And then having like a whole night conversation with him in his office.
Yeah.
And then picking him up when he was a kid along the road, going down to back to his farm. Part of that, to me, isn't really... Like, to me, I see it differently. I don't see it as time travel. I see it as more of like a spirit thing, kind of like a spirit realm, more of the line of just it being like a ghost. What I find interesting in it, though, is that everybody, to a point, looks the way they did when they passed away.
Yeah. You
can make some arguments that isn't a concrete statement for the film because they show other players that clearly are in playing age, and a lot of them died in the 70s, 60s, and the early 80s. But you see him as an old man, the way he looked when he died. And then if you're paying attention, you know who it is as soon as he gets into the van, because he's talking about, going to a town where they'll find jobs for you in the town if you play for their team. That off the bat, for that era when the movie was made, just like how Costner's character was saying, doesn't exist anymore. Like, that's something they did back in the 20s because his dad used to talk about stuff like that.
Yeah. There's a lot of heartbreaking moments towards the end of the film. Like the whole last chunk of it when they're at the baseball field and the brother-in-law comes and yells at him like, "You got to sell this."
Yeah.
Like the kid falling.
Yeah.
And choking on the hot dog, and then the doc comes over to the edge of the field and then crosses the threshold, and then he's old again. Like, that was not something I expected.
Well, that part of it part of what makes the obsession with baseball, and I can kind of explain this a little bit. People always say that it's a romantic game. Like, baseball is romance, or baseball is a romantic sport, and it's because it can be so many different things to different people.
Yeah.
And for that character, he just wanted one inning to be able to prove that he could play with major league players.
Yeah.
But he says when he's older in his office that 5 minutes as a doctor would have been a tragedy. And he had fun playing baseball, and it was a hobby for him, and it was fun, and that's what his release was. But helping people was more important to him, and that's what I like about that character, is that it shows that in a movie that's based around a guy where baseball is everything to him. It's good to have that reminder of it's just a game. Yeah.
And I like that. I liked how you see him like hesitate for a second about what to do, and then he does it, and then he's gone.
Yeah.
And then you have James Earl Jones' speech.
Yeah.
Where they will come. They will come from all over.
Yeah.
The light side, the dark side. And then they invite him to go with them when they leave. Now, I take that as that's him dying. Is that
I don't know. I haven't really looked into a lot of the fan theories about the movie. Yeah,
it's kind of open-ended. That's how I interpreted it. Yeah. How do you interpret it?
To be honest, every time I see it, I'm always expecting him to say, no, you don't understand. Like, there's another reason why he's secluded himself from society, and it could be that, like, he was diagnosed with something, and he's dying.
Yeah.
And that's why they invited him, because it's like he's going to be dead in 2 weeks because he has terminal cancer or something.
Here's the thing, though.
I'm always expecting that.
Here's the thing that just popped in my head. I don't want him to be his death, because he has to let his father know where he is throughout the story. And he tells him he's going to Iowa to this farm with his friend. And I'm sure he told his father the friend's name. So if he dies, goes in the cornfield, disappears, that father is going to be calling the police and arresting Kevin Costner for murder.
No, that wouldn't happen in this. No, that wouldn't happen in this one.
I'm getting dark, but
well, because the sheriff in town's favorite favorite baseball player, let's say, was like, I don't know, Babe Ruth, to make it easy. And then he goes down to arrest him, and he looks over there, and there's Babe with a signed baseball bat. He's not going to get arrested. He's not going to get.
So now we're bribing police.
Hell yeah.
Okay. Hey, whatever floats your boat, man.
How do you take the wife's acceptance of everything so quickly? Because it happens. Like, he builds the baseball park within, like, the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. I think it's a little hard to buy it the first time, but then she starts hearing it too and seeing stuff in her dreams. So, like, I get where she's coming from. I feel bad for her because she has, like, that big victory at that rally, and, like, he's so obsessed with what's going on with him and his visions that he just completely ignores her. And I wish they would have done more with that. Like, more of her being left in the dust while he's pursuing this giant thing. And I guess to a point it is, with her having to deal with the financials while he's off running the Boston.
When she turns the corner after getting off the phone and there's her brother with the two bank guys.
Yeah. It's kind of weird that she got on board so fast, but...
Yeah, because, I mean, like, he tells her, be like, I'm hearing voices out in the field. They're telling me to build this. Well, what is it? Well, I don't know. Then he gets a vision of a baseball field. And she tells him, and then he tells her, and she's just like, well, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. And she goes, okay, fine. If this is what you really want to do, we'll do it. And then the next day, he builds the thing, and then even then, it's like he's staring out the window, and it takes like a year.
Yeah.
But then eventually, the daughter comes around and goes, there's a man standing in the field. And then that's when, like, everything comes to a head.
This is a different kind of sports movie.
Oh, it is. It is.
And I like it. I like sports movies. I'm not a huge sports fan, but I like sports movies. I really like this one because it incorporates sports, so you don't need to have like any history you need to know. It tells you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's very informative and sets it up very well.
Yeah.
It's a lot of narration there at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
A lot of narration. But it's all needed for the story compared to something like 42, like, where it's like a straight up biopic. Like, I like something like this where it takes the history and plays with it, and
it turns it into its own thing.
Yeah.
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 Like, how would you like, if you had to pick a genre for this film, what would you do? Like, sports fantasy?
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, there's not really a lot like this.
There really isn't. The only thing I can think that's even remotely similar is Angels in the Outfield.
Yeah.
And even that's completely different.
Yeah, because it's a kid's film.
Yeah.
What I think is the biggest draw to this is that it's basically an adult kid movie. Like, it's basically it's a grown-up fantasy for baseball fans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like, you're telling me I can build this thing in my backyard, and all of the great players that have passed on will come back and just practice and play just to have fun. Like, yeah, hell, I'll go into bankruptcy to build that because I know I'm going to, it's going to be, one, great experience, and two, I mean, as long as other people can see it.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to have to worry about anything.
Yeah. Now, the baseball field's real, right?
Yeah.
I heard something about them having like financial issues, or somebody vandalized the field recently.
I didn't hear about that. I knew that it was in the news recently.
Yeah, back in January, somebody drove through the field. See, that field looks different now than it did in the movie, or is that just me?
You also have to account for the fact of like how long it's been.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, when they made it for the movie, it was just your classic diamond, like old school diamond.
Yeah.
Now that is made to actually be used.
Okay.
So you've got stretches of dirt on there that weren't there for the film, like the stretch of dirt that goes from the pitcher's mound to home plate.
Yeah.
And for those, well, for everybody listening, there's no live studio audience here. We're not Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
My attempted humor. Anyway, so
I got it.
You've got, when you watch the film, you've got the pitcher's mound is just a dirt circle.
Yeah.
Nowadays, there's a dirt strip that goes from where the pitcher's mound is to home plate. And
why is that?
It's something that they started doing recently.
Okay.
To be honest, I don't know. It's just
because honestly, it looks like a penis.
Yeah, I know.
Just throwing that out there.
And then you've got the extra dirt strips that go outside where the foul lines are.
Yeah.
And again, that's another thing that I'm not exactly sure why, but a lot of more modern baseball fields that are used for like youth have that type of a setup.
Okay. One fun piece of trivia that I learned after watching the movie is that there's no one knows who the voice is that says, "If you build it, they will come." Like they have never confirmed who the voice is, who provided the voice.
Well, that's because they didn't need to. You go into any field in Iowa and you hear voices like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the corn. It's the wind going through the corn.
I've never gone to Iowa.
It's what gave them the idea for it. If you stand in any cornfield in Iowa and you just stand there and listen for a little bit, the wind going through the corn, it sounds like if you build it, it will come. And they just amplified it a little bit.
Okay. Oh, man.
It's uncredited. You don't have to pay corn.
This is true. Corn is pretty cheap. You gotta be careful, though, it'll get stuck in your teeth.
Yeah, well, these things happen.
Yeah. Anything else you got?
Well, the one as a fanatic like I am, the one thing I like about this, and one thing I was thinking of the last time I was watching it, you've got, obviously, baseball didn't integrate fully in the modern era until Jackie Robinson finally broke that barrier, or the owner of the Dodgers signed him to make him the first player.
Yeah.
The players in this film are from more of the golden age, what people call the golden age of baseball, which is around the time, Shoeless Joe in 1911. You also have Ty Cobb. You also have Roger Hornsby, and you have Babe Ruth, and you've got all those players. All of them are white.
Mm-hmm.
You won't have any other skin tone playing with them during the time period. So it's the one thing that kind of ages this film a little bit. But at the same time, if you know the history of it, you understand it. So it's not going to be that big of a problem. But if you're watching this film and you see the players out in the field, if you're not aware of what the different, every uniform was a pro team.
Yeah.
MLB, actual Major League Baseball uniforms. Some of them were changed a tiny bit to make them more noticeable, but the one that's going to be the least well-known amongst people that aren't as into the history is the Philadelphia A's.
Okay.
Athletics, which are now the Oakland Athletics. Same colors, but you've got the White Sox with the S, the Yankees with the NY, Giants had the orange and the black.
Yeah.
You had the Cardinals were there. There's about 3 or 4 Cardinals players there. There were 2 Reds players, and then there were players from the Philadelphia Athletics, and that was the one with the more English style A. I love that type of stuff when they get that detailed and into things. And this was definitely the movie to do it, because if they didn't, they would have gotten their heads ripped off.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's the kind of thing where you get those purists who want to make sure that everything is accurate.
And if there's one thing baseball fanatics can claim, is that we have the most annoying, diehard, purist fans you can get.
I don't know. I could probably think of a few fandoms that would fight you on that. There are a few Trekkies out there that would just picture the fans from Galaxy Quest.
Okay, well they've got their equals in the baseball spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, sports is just like a TV show that never goes off the air.
True.
You have your season premiere and then your season finale.
Yeah,
your season might end a little sooner than some other teams, but still.
Yeah. But it's still the way it works. And then
people get dressed up, cosplay,
go
to events, and cheer.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly the same thing.
And that's, I don't know, movies like this to me are just they're good ones to. If you have a couple, it's not that long a movie. It's like an hour and 30-some minutes.
Yeah, it wasn't long at all.
So I mean, for me, it's one of those movies I can just put in on an afternoon.
Yeah, it's a good one for that, especially this time of year where it's nice outside. But if it's nice outside, get the fuck out. Just go outside.
Open a window. That's all you got to do.
Open a window, watch the Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
Hear voices come through the window.
Mm-hmm.
You want to order a pizza? That's the voice I hear.
Yeah.
Order a pizza.
Order a pizza, and they will come. Be like,
yeah.
Who will come? Well,
the delivery guy,
man, obviously.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I highly recommend this if you haven't seen it yet. I'm probably one of the few people who hasn't seen it until now.
Yeah. Well,
so it's on Netflix for now, I think. I think I just read somewhere that it's leaving. But yeah, check it out if you can. For You Have to Watch This podcast. Oh, no. You're leading this podcast.
I'm leading this.
Yes.
So for You Have to Watch This podcast, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Alan.